Hi, everyone. Welcome to Me, You, and Who. On today's episode, we are talking with Lauren Palm, our Surrogate Matching and Education Director. Lauren has been a part of our team since 2010 after she had her own journey as a surrogate. Lauren does an amazing job of finding just the right match for intended parents and gestational carriers before sending them on their way to creating their happy family. She is a busy mom of two, and her weekends are filled with sports practices and games. And amidst all of that, Lauren is able to smile, have fun, and she really, truly has the biggest passion for creating happy families. In this episode, we cover just what it looks like to be an intended parent, the whole portion of matching, things to think about as you go into this journey. So please enjoy Lauren Palm. Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day.
Hi, Lauren. I am so excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to do this with me. But yes, oh my goodness. First of all, when did you even first hear about the idea of being a surrogate and surrogacy in general?
It's been 14 years since I first really learned about surrogacy and decided to become a surrogate. And twins that I had will be 13 in 2 months. So I guess it's really been 15 years because I was pregnant for a year of that before they were
Right.
born, if you think about it. So yeah, it's been great. It's changed so much
Wow.
in the time since I started doing it. They didn't even do genetic testing on the embryos has just been a thing that came about. Like everybody used to transfer two embryos when I was a surrogate because there was only like a 50% chance each one would work. Like they were guessing if they were good or not. And a lot of people had twins, myself included, because those were good ones.
So, okay, there's so much there. I don't want to unpack it all, but how did you first even hear about surrogacy, and what research, if any, did you do to make you even want to go down that road?
Honestly, I don't remember exactly what it was that said it in me, but I do know that the thing that I most remember is telling somebody when I heard about it, like, I feel like that's something I could do. And someone saying, "That's crazy. I can never do that." And I was like, well, if most people can't do it, then I better. Like, I can't withhold my special gifting from the universe. Like,
Absolutely.
so true. What I found all these years of talking to all these surrogates is that it is just like not everyone can do it. And when you know, like, I can give this big thing to someone else, like it's a calling for sure.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely couldn't agree more. Were you independent, or, which for those who don't know, independent means you are just doing it, you and the intended parents, and you don't have an agency, or did you work with an agency?
No, actually, I started with Google, like all the people mostly. And
Absolutely.
I was in Houston at the time, and I found an egg donor and surrogacy agency in Houston. And I called, and they said, "We don't really do surrogacy anymore. We've been working with this lady named Gail. You should call her." And so I called
Oh.
Gail, who founded the original Surrogate Solutions, and she educated me and matched me with my intended parents. And then I came to work with her.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. So again, for those who don't know, Gail Garrett, like Lauren said, was the original owner of Surrogate Solutions before it became Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, and we adore her, and she's still with us, working with our intended parents. But oh my gosh, that's so fun. Okay, so you were matched with Gail, and you were matched with your intended parents. Were your intended parents local? Were you traveling, or how
We
was
were,
that?
we were all in Houston at the time, and we met at dinner. And I knew when I met them over dinner that, like, had I met them at a party or another event or something, like, we would have clicked and became friends.
Uh-huh.
And so it was very easy to say, yes, I will totally have your baby for you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. So obviously, like you said, everything from 15 years ago to now, the whole matching process has completely changed. I mean, our agency as a
That was the
whole
big,
has evolved.
sorry. For starters, that was the
No,
big thing. We met in person. Like, we met for dinner, just like Gail. And I should say the same thing. Like, it feels like I know this person who needs a surrogate, and I know this person who would totally be willing to be a great surrogate. I'm going to introduce them together. We're going to have dinner, see if they hit it off. It's like classic matchmaking, right? And that's exactly
absolutely.
how it felt. Like, yep, these could be my friends. I could have their baby. We're going to do this, and it was a very personal relationship.
Yeah.
And that is how it started. And that is the way that we were doing all of the matches were mostly local and people who met in person for everything. And as things have evolved over the last years, I ended up getting divorced and moving back to Florida shortly after I started working with Gail, and kind of basically started in Florida from scratch of going to different clinics and introducing myself so that they would refer intended parents and meeting different surrogates. And I used to do all the match meetings in person, like meet for dinner or lunch and introduce people to one another to see if we hit it off and want to move forward together. And now that, I mean, as it's been a combination of, as we've grown, I was spending so much time in the car, and then local got further and further apart where I was driving all over the state of Florida. And then it was like, I am spending more time in the car than I am doing anything else. So
Meeting with people, yeah.
It's time to start figuring out a way to do things over. And so we were Zooming before COVID, which is when most people learned about Zoom. But it's crazy. Like, I have match meetings with people all over the country. I mean, and for a while I was doing quite a few international matches, but with our pool of surrogates that are so local, and we still want those personal relationships so much. I match local anytime that I can. Like, that's such a big request of, like, we'd love someone local so we can be involved, so we can go to the appointments. It's not always possible, and supply and demand is a big factor of that, but definitely make as many local matches as we can to still have that personal relationship throughout the journey. But technology's been so amazing in that I can match a couple in California with a surrogate in Colorado, and we're all in different places, and then they're able to go forward from there. So it's face to face, which is not quite as good as in person, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty well, and you do such a great job of just, kind of getting people to be vulnerable and get to know each other, even if it is over Zoom. So basically, kind of a skeletal version of how it works is an intended parent and a gestational carrier, they apply, and then you get a series of just applications, and you're looking at them. What are some of, like, the big matching factors that you're going through whenever you start thinking about and getting to know people, and I think these intended parents would match really well with this gestational carrier? How do you go about doing all that?
Well, it starts with the deal breakers, which has always been shared views on termination.
Sure.
Only if something's wrong, which is crazy because in 15 years, like, we haven't really had to deal with people who wanted to terminate a pregnancy. Intended parents are spending all these years trying to get a baby, and these, up to $150,000 for this baby. The last thing they're going to want to do is terminate a pregnancy. But it's a very real concern of not having control of that. If someone else is carrying your baby and something is wrong, not having that choice to make. So that's a very important choice to a lot of intended parents. And a lot of surrogates feel like that's not a choice that they would make. So making sure they align on their pro-choice, pro-life beliefs has always been, like, kind of the big thing, number one, even though it's the thing, like, we never really need to do, but they do need to be aligned on those beliefs. So that's always been kind of number one. And only in the last couple of years has the COVID vaccination, which is also, like, the most divisive thing ever, come into play, where I need to make sure that people are aligned on their beliefs in that. And if they have that vaccine or did not have that vaccine. And if the clinic is requiring that vaccine, then the surrogate has to have that vaccine. So that became a really big thing in the last few years, since it's changed everything. So once I've narrowed down those two things that we're on the same page on, then I can really look at that, like we mentioned earlier, like location. How important is it? Like, would you like a local match? And is that because you want to be involved? You want to have a friendship. You want to have a relationship. You want to go to all of the appointments, and making sure they both feel like that's what they want. They want that same type of relationship. If the intended parents are not that keen on a relationship, then it doesn't matter. If they really are like, well, we might like to go to one appointment, but that's not important to us. We can Zoom appointments or whatever, then
Sure.
they can have the surrogate that's anywhere, right? Because they're only going to have to travel, to get the baby at the end, and they can communicate over technology, throughout the whole pregnancy and still maintain a relationship. Uh, kind of figuring out what that level is. And then another part of it's like personality. Like, you can't necessarily have two type A people that want to drive the bus and be in charge. And like, really, the best matches are two people who are letting the coordinator be in charge and drive the bus. Or you can attest to. Um, but intended parents, like, I'm never their first choice for how to have a baby, right? Like, it's always
Sure.
been a lot of loss and a lot of trauma and an enormous amount of false hope and disappointment before they get to me. So what I find is a lot of intended parents have a hard time getting excited about milestones that they've already hit and then had loss. And a lot of surrogates have never experienced any of that. So for them, it's like, yay, we have, it worked. We're going to transfer. It's going to work. We got a ART positive beta. I'm pregnant. And for them in their minds, like, everything is a celebration. And for intended parents, it's like, okay, but we've already done this before and it didn't work. We've already done this before and it didn't work. We've already gotten to this point before and it didn't work. And so it's finding people who are compassionate with each other's situation and are like on the same page about how much is celebration and how much is, being respectfully optimistic that this is going to work. And some intended parents want to know more and they want to hear about all of the kicks, and others it's harder to hear about some of those things. And so it's just kind of putting the personalities together of making sure that they are both empathetic and compassionate.
Absolutely. What would you say is, I mean, do you feel like you mostly get intended parents that are wanting to pursue a relationship with their carrier, or do you feel like a lot of it's transactional mostly, or do you feel like it's kind of a combination?
It's definitely, with our agency, it is definitely not as transactional as it can be with a lot of other agencies. And that really comes down to the surrogates, because at the end of the day, mostly what I hear is like, we just need a good person to have our baby and we'll do whatever she wants. Coming from intended parents. If she wants a relationship, we'll be there. If she doesn't, we'll back off. Like, we're just so grateful that someone's going to help us, right? And
Yeah.
the surrogates that are applying with our agency are wanting to help someone, right? So they do tend to drive more of that, wanting a relationship, wanting to choose their intended parents, wanting to have that connection, because their joy comes from seeing the intended parents' joy. Like, they're coming
Yeah.
into this to watch their faces light up on the ultrasound, like, because they're the ones seeing their baby, getting their baby. Like, they're the ones, like, the surrogate's just, like the oven, right? Like,
Yeah.
but her joy all comes from theirs. Like, the joy is completely from that. So that's why so many of them do want that match and want that closeness and them to be involved. And they can get a lot of that seeing them over FaceTime just as well as seeing them in person. But it is a totally different experience when you're communicating just over text with intended parents that don't necessarily speak the language, that you never met in person or developed that relationship with before they show up for delivery. So a lot of our, so then that's mostly why we don't do as many international matches as we were at one point, even though there's that huge need there as well. Most of our surrogates are choosing the intended parents that they feel like they would like to have a relationship with. And so
Absolutely.
the intended parents I find would much, I think, once they realize what they're getting into, kind of in the beginning, they're just like, whatever, we just need a bit, like, once they see the difference in that, like, when you have a relationship, you have trust. It's so much easier to trust someone that's having your baby when you can see them and interact with them. And it isn't just like a text,
Yeah.
and then checking in after appointments when you feel like you know them as a person. So So I think to answer your question, it's not very transactional in the sense that the relationship is kind of why the surrogates are choosing our agency to choose their intended parents. And if they wanted a more transactional relationship, they would choose a different agency. They would choose the agency that's offering the highest compensation, and you don't have any idea who your intended parents are going to be, and you may or may not get to meet them. And the intended parents are choosing that other agency because, like, whoever's next on the list gets the next surrogate, and we'll pay whatever, just get us matched as fast as possible. It's just a very different mentality than we're looking for the person that we can have a relationship with to go through this very emotional process with.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say is, because I know, I mean, in talking with intended parents, what would you say is kind of the difference between we don't necessarily have a list, but other agencies do have a list? What would you call us?
I always say you're not on a list, you're in a bucket. Because like no one's ranked any higher than the other. It's not who's been waiting the longest. And I don't owe everyone that I meet a match regardless of who the surrogate is. And I'm very clear with all of the intended parents that, like, I am going to share your profile with, I only get so many surrogates. And when the first surrogate comes in, if she says to me, I'm in Dallas, I only want to work with an intended parent that's in Dallas because I want them to be local and I want them to come to appointments, and I really just only want to care for first time intended parents, then I'm not going to show her a couple in Oregon that doesn't really want to travel to Dallas and go to appointments that already has 2 kids. I'm going to show her who I have in Dallas that wants to come to all of the appointments that doesn't have any kids. But if I know that, because I talked to this awesome couple in Oregon, that I think they would get along really well, and they happen to be in a position in which they can still travel and come to all of the appointments, I'm still going to let her look at their profile. But I'm going to meet her need while also meeting their need to the best of my ability in creating the right match.
Which, I mean, just goes back to that sociology degree, feeling these people out. Just all of that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's a big master puzzle versus other agencies. What you're saying is when you come up on a list, you're just matched
so
the end.
Our waiting list is 12 months because we match 10 surrogates a month and you're 120th on the list. So by the time we get to you, we'll be at about it'll take about a year for us to get to you. Well, what if their perfect surrogate just applies tomorrow, but instead she's going to get assigned to the couple who's been waiting the longest that's in Oregon instead of the couple in Dallas that she just met, that you just met, but who would be perfect for her in every way, except they haven't been waiting long enough.
That's so interesting and so hard, and definitely takes a lot of trust. So what would you say, with all of the matchmaking and puzzle work that essentially you're doing, what would you say is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is when I feel like Gail meets with the intended parents initially, and she's able to give them some hope that, yes, we are going to be able to get you a baby. There's another way we can do this. And I get to watch the hope turn into joy when they when they meet the person. And like, you can tell by the profile so much because we do a great job of putting all the details there. Like, there are some match meetings that are like, we already know all the answers to all the questions that we want to have. Like, we don't really have any other questions. Match meeting isn't to like find out if they answer the questions correctly. The match meeting is to read their energy and to see if you vibe, because like, on paper, people look one way, but like, you want to make sure like, okay, this is a real person. They're laughing. We get the same jokes. We have the same sense of humor. Like, and you can just visibly see when they go from like blind date nerves at the beginning of like, are they going to like me? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to whatever? To like, just go, oh, like you can see their shoulders like relax and them go, okay, these are real people. We can totally be friends with these people and we are gonna make a baby. Like that's the joy.
That's huge. That's so huge and so fun. I mean, yeah, those, I have to say, as a coordinator, whenever I read those match meeting notes, you definitely take excellent and sometimes very hilarious notes.
I feel as if you were in the room with us.
I appreciate that. I so appreciate that. That's awesome. So, okay. Again, for those who don't know, generally the process with our agency is Gail meets with intended parents. We have our surrogate education team. They then come to you. You're showing profiles and you're having some back and forth, whether it, yes, no, yes, we want to meet them. And then you have that match meeting. And in that match meeting, what kind of questions are you asking? Obviously, you said you're trying to see if they have a good vibe, things like that. But what are kind of some of those main hot topics, I guess, that do come up in those match meetings?
Well, I think one of the things intended parents most want to know about surrogates is like, what's their motivation behind doing this? Like, how did they get there? I always ask the husband, like, pretty much initial, like, right. My first question to him is like, so what do you think when your wife said she wanted to have someone else's baby? Because one, it makes people laugh, like, and kind of lightens it up a little bit. And two, like,
Sure.
really, what did you think? Like, were you like, because most husbands are like, you want to do what now? And like, and they have to like really convince their husbands to be on board. And like, almost their answer is always like, my wife is just an amazingly giving person, and it really doesn't surprise me that this is just one more way she wants to help. Like, almost
Sure.
always that's what they come back to, because that's who surrogates are and that's who they marry, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that, and then like, who's around you, who's supporting you, like, as your fan. So we kind of talk about, where'd you grow up, where your family's from, are you local, like, so, and we're finding out like, who's going to watch your kids when you go to these appointments, like, is your mom there, like, do other people know you're doing this, like, really kind of getting a sense of the support system of what that looks like.
Sure.
And then we talk about what kind of relationship, like, involvement we want, how often the intended parents are going to come to appointments, and what the surrogate's expectations are. I always ask people, like, what's your favorite way to communicate? Like, are you one of those people that when your phone rings, you look at it and you're like, why didn't this person text me? Or are you like, every time you get in the car, you make some phone calls because that's your time and you really like to talk on the phone? Like, so that they know, like, if someone only wants to text and someone wants to talk on the phone, like, we need to know these things. Like, we need to know how best to communicate with each
Sure.
other to be successful and kind of set the stage for that. So like those kind of things that aren't necessarily like things that would come up in the profile. Obviously we talk about, the things that are on the profile, but we do talk about, what if it doesn't work, and termination, and those kind of like, what if something bad happens, how are we going to handle it and kind of respond to it and make sure we're on the same page with that. We talk about social media. I mean, like, don't you think you should know if the person you're matching with has 500,000 TikTok followers?
Let's have a conversation about that.
Let's have
That's
a conversation
hilarious.
about how we're going to share this and what the privacy is going to be. And we
Yeah.
talk about like being in the delivery room and what those expectations are. So yeah, we talk about trips coming up or anything like that's, scheduling wise. We talk about pumping because that's anything that's a deal breaker for some people. We're going to talk about it, make sure it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, mostly it's a get to know you. I feel like I have a lot of conversations, like getting the husbands to engage with one another about like making sure they root for the right football teams, especially in the South, or other teams like the Red
Absolutely.
Allegiances. Like, I can't tell you how many barbecue conversations I've had in like Texas, or like, I think one of your cases, like there was a whole Harry Potter thing that I was making notes about, like their different.
Oh, yes, there was. It was so
I don't even know
funny.
what that stuff is, but I knew you would know. So I'm like taking notes, like they're Slytherin, they're Gryffindor, they're whatever's. Like, Whitney will know how to use this information. Like, but they were bonding over it, and that's what's important.
Oh my gosh, no, absolutely. Yes, that was one of my favorite things. And I'm pretty sure whenever I met with them later and they were my case, I was like, by the way, guys, I'm a Hufflepuff. And it was totally my way in. It was awesome. No, but that's great. It's those nitty gritty, extra details that just make it more personal and less transactional.
My
And
job is to create the foundation that they're building their relationship on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then coordinators help them build the relationship as they go through. And as
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Navigating the journey and making sure all of the things get done.
All of it, yeah. The baby is made. Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, you do such a great job of there's so much getting established prior to them even getting to us as coordinators. And you do such a great job of just getting that set up so that everybody can have a successful journey. And when things do pop up, everybody can navigate it, and we know how to navigate it.
Yes. For your
So,
kind.
no, you do a really great job. Is there anything, I mean, from when you first started as a matching coordinator to now, how do you think you've evolved in, I mean, obviously the industry itself has evolved, so you've had to evolve with that, but how do you think you've evolved as you've gotten to know, or as you've kind of gone through this?
I listen a lot more than and I can read between the lines a lot better. So I would
Spidey
say
senses.
I have developed a lot of intuition.
Uh-huh.
And because and so much of that is just experience in the things that I've seen go wrong before that I didn't know were going to, like the red flags, like I can recognize them so much sooner. Like anxiety is a red flag, like because like as you well know as a coordinator and in someone that has a lot of anxiety about everything is a lot more work than someone. I'm not saying people who have a lot of anxiety shouldn't be matched, but I'm just saying, like, it's so much better for me to match them with someone who is so much of a calming reassurance presence for them. Someone
Sure.
that can just say over, I've done this before. Everything was seamless for me. Like, I got you. Like, you don't need to worry. And I can provide that education versus somebody that's like, I have 3 kids and I'm very busy and I can't calm you down right now. Like, it's in kind of putting those matches together, but the things that people don't talk about.
Right. That's not the stuff that's on the profile. That's not in the paper. No one wants to talk about that when you're in that match meeting. And so it's that whole get to know you part in your job, like you said, that intuition. So what would you say is one thing that you would want to say to potential GCs and potential IPs as they maybe are looking into this, and I guess maybe expectations, or really just anything? What would be like one maybe key takeaway for each or all?
Tell me what you really, really want. Like,
I tell you what I want, what I really, really want.
yeah, that's what I feel like the biggest thing that intended parents do on their profile initially is make it as vague as possible so everyone will not be offended and like them. Like so that anyone who's but I feel like the ones that the surrogates want are the ones that say exactly what they want.
Okay, so be honest. Be honest, because you're
Right.
not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay.
Because
Because
no one's
if you're
find your
matched,
cup of tea. Right. Like,
yeah,
tell me what you really want. And I'm not saying I'm going to give everybody exactly what they want because there are only so many unicorns in the world to put together, right? But
sure.
like for sure, like I want everybody to get the best match for them. And so the more transparency, the more honesty, the more vulnerability that they show in who they really are, the better I can do my job.
So, final question, and this is just for fun. It can be serious. It can relate to your job. It can be silly. It can be whatever. But what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Um, that's a hard one.
I
Like
know.
I wish I'd known how many small agencies were going to sprout up and that there was like that it would be the way it just changed so much than when I started. When I started in Florida, there were 2 other agencies besides myself, like educating and working with Florida surrogates, and now there are hundreds. And there's so much that intended parents don't know, like, and there's so much you don't know one agency from another and like that what their reputations are. And someone could just decide, like, I was a surrogate, so now I'm starting a surrogate agency, and I have one surrogate that is my friend that I'm going to match with whichever intended parents I can get as how it starts. And so there's just a lot of you don't knows. And there's not any oversight in the industry with like a certain standard that different surrogacy agencies have to meet. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
room for bad humans to take advantage of very vulnerable people, and that
Mm.
is frustrating to me because I also didn't. There was no Facebook when I started this. Can I change my answer? That's what I wish I had known.
There you go. That's a good one.
No Facebook when we started doing this, and now like everybody's like, I'm going to just find my match online and I'm going to save all this money by not using an agency and they think it's so easy, but like the reason your job is so hard and is because of all the things that have to get done and all the obstacles that come up and all the things that it's just not as easy like as it sounds like it is if everything works perfectly on the first try. And there's just so many things that come up and so many changes and so many things that are out of control. And so I feel like the biggest thing we do is educate people and tell them like, this is normal, this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen, this is what could happen. And I just feel like so many people are unprepared and so many people are set up to be taken advantage of by other just not good humans that are out there. And social media, like, you don't know that anyone's who they say they are, and then they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And even that there are agencies that have, taken people's money and just disappeared. And that's just hard. Like, I just didn't see coming. And maybe that's just my lack of foresight that it would turn into just so many people trying to do what we're doing and doing it so very poorly.
Right. Well, I mean, like you said, like when you first started, you Googled. You Googled and you can type in surrogacy and I mean, you get pages and pages and pages. And I mean, yeah, I know for me, when I was looking into being a surrogate, it was by word of mouth that I heard and just happened to hear about our agency. And I mean, and got lucky. I got lucky. For sure. So no,
A lot of people get unlucky, and we get a lot of surrogates that come from their second journey and they're like, my agency was really hands off. Like they wanted to get me matched and then we just didn't hear anything from them. Or I never got to look at profile. I never got a I was just told these are your people. And I didn't know that I could have a relationship. I didn't know that I could choose them. I didn't know that how many times we hear I didn't know is, I think, probably why we work so hard to make sure that no surrogate's going to say I didn't know. We basically assume no one knows anything and we tell them everything.
No, I like that. Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Exactly. Yeah. Lack of education, especially in something so big like this, can really be a detriment. So, no, that's good. Well, thank you. I love you. You're one of the best people in the whole world. I appreciate you giving your time to this.
Thanks.
You have just finished listening to an episode of Me, You, and Who. To find out more about egg donor and surrogate solutions, go to www.createahappyfamily.com.